Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Fiend. Back on the Card Fight Vanguard deck professor. Come subscribe and small shall we? Before we do, remember these decks are not built to their most optimal ability, they're just built for fun. So if you're looking for the best, most optimal build or one of the more optimal builds, please click off this video. But if you're just looking for a deck built for fun by me, then go ahead and continue watching. So today we are doing the final deck of set 8 already. Yes, I know I ran through these very quickly because I do have a lot of things to get done over the time span of this next few weeks, so I decided to ram rush all these deck profiles out at once, but also just to give you guys all these deck profiles out at once, because honestly there are a lot of good decks here, and that is Shojodoji. So, Shojodoji is that new deck that I was really happy for when I saw it, because I was like, yeah, new stealth line, because I didn't really like Tamayura for the stealth line, and I'm so glad we got this, because I've been wanting a bind line for a while now, and I'm really glad that we got one. It's very fun to play for me, and I just love the whole deck aesthetic, so especially one very specific unit where I really want to run it in the main deck at a 4 of, but I won't because it's not worth it, but it's so funny I want to. So let's go and get this started, shall we? First up, we have our starter today, and Can't Quit Shake Stealth. Yeah, Sake Stealth Shake. Now I can't say that word. Can't Quit Shake Stealth Rogue Shojodoji. Grade 0, it's a boost, 5k shows this K base. On a road opponent, win second draw card. Standard starter no special means if you went second and you rode upon it, you just get a free draw. Honestly, I am still kind of disappointed that they didn't bring back new starters or like starter abilities, just random different ones. Granted, they never said they were going to, but I do miss that. That was a fun thing in G, and I will forever bring this up now. But all around, still a decent skill nonetheless. You don't really need this for your starter, but might as well run it for the whole Shojodoji line, am I right? So one of in the right deck. Then we have our normal triggers, or our triggers in general. First up, starting with the over trigger, of course, the end-all be-all trigger. I can't talk now. Dragon Deity, King of Resurgence, Dragveda. I've recorded all of these back-to-back. I literally cannot talk now. So grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power, over trigger. You may only have one over trigger in your deck. Reveals the trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one of is plus 1 movement for the turn, and if you revealed it during a draw check, activate its additional effect, which is choose one of your Vanguards and stand it. So, all around pretty great. You get a free Vanguard stand. In this deck, it doesn't do as much, but it's not like Eugene where it'd just be like a self-detriment, or like Overlord where depending on what happened, it would either be a minus or a plus. So, all around, just being a free plus 1 million is great, not to mention the fact that you get an extra Vanguard stand. It's like the more simplistic out of all the over trigger skills, except maybe tied with Armor Tino, but it's still a good skill nonetheless, because getting quad drive for the turn is essentially really good. So one of the over trigger, it's a good thing, and it's honestly the over trigger I see the most. Obviously not in this deck, but in Nirvana, Nirvana has a thing with this one. Then we have our normal triggers, actually. First up, we have 3 draw triggers in Flail, Veil, Dragon, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base, draw strings, guard circle, opponent's Vanguard to grade 3, I guess, plus 5k shield. So, standard draw, it's just getting the hand cards and then being a 10k shield, which is very nice because on occasions, if you want to go for the early rush, having the extra 10k to help you in the late game, because maybe you committed a little too much in the early game, can definitely come back to help you. Or maybe just the early game guard works, and either way, getting hand cards is nice because you might not always be able to commit a board thanks to Shojodoji skill. Then we have 4 fronts in Stealth Dragon Jaengoku, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power. Okay, here's the thing. We all know I have nothing against the Blaze Maiden front, and we all know in every deck I would have ran the Blaze Maiden front regardless of what deck it's for. The reason why it's not in this one, though, is because of the word stealth. And that is actually important because Shojodoji works with stealth units. Now, it's rare that we're going to end up in the situation where this one will make the difference, but again, it's in case it does, I run this for a reason. So, you know, extra 10k for front triggers. Logically, you don't need this. Just run Parama if you're going to run fronts. But I like to make sure that I'm good in every scenario, so 4 of Stealth Dragon Jaengoku. It's a nice front, and I've always liked running him in my decks. I don't know why. He just seems cool to me, so 4 of Jaengoku. And we have 4 crits and Burning Flail Dragon, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power, critical trigger auto rear, then about to boost at anything, put him to soul, choose your 2k for the turn. Okay. Doesn't do much for this deck because most of their Soul Blast targets are stealth units, but it does something for the units that don't have to Soul Blast stealth units. And, you know, being able to give plus 2k doesn't really do much, but again, Soul. So take that as you will. It's not bad. It's not amazing, but it's not bad either. So 4 crits. So we run Rainbow Triggers. If you wanted to go the more, I guess, not professional build, but the more, I guess, aggressive build, I would say probably run 7 crits, 3 fronts, just because, but I like the rainbow line, because why not? And then we have 4 heals and Blaze Maiden Reony. Grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power. Okay, so for those of you wondering why am I not running the stealth heal that instead of this heal, considering the fact I willingly ran this over the Parama, well, this time shield actually has something to do with it, because I've made this clear at this point on this channel enough that I hate the effect heals because I feel like they're situational. Yeah, even in the situations where where I might need a stealth unit, I'd rather lose than rely on that heal trigger. I am not joking. Like, I refuse to run that heal or like either of the heals for that matter that are effects heals. I'd rather just take the 15k shield, especially because like most of this deck is stealth units anyways. If I really do end up running that situation, I'd rather just lose at that point. At that point, I deserve to lose. So for a regular heal, run the effect heals if you want. I don't like them, so do as you wish. Screw that effect heal. 4 of this one. Then we have our grade 1s. So 3 of a tech option that you can choose to keep or you can choose not to keep. Me personally, I just like to keep him because when he shows up, he does something really well for the deck. And that is Stealth Dragon Togachirashi. Togachirashi. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 7k base. Auto when you see discarded from your hand during your turn, you may put this card to soul. So the benefit is he can be discarded during any point during your turn, so battle phase, end of turn, technically speaking, main phase, or ride phase, most likely. You can just get a free soul charge, and that's great because it helps set up the soul early for Shojodoji and gives you more soul targets to give everything else that isn't a Shojodoji soul blast. And not to mention the fact that, you know, again, he has stealth in his name, so he works with the whole deck's, I guess, like, general thing of needing stealth for their skills. And granted, there are a lot of other stealth units you can do, but this was just the one that found the most interesting because the only other ones I could find were either vanillas or were restricted to your opponent's rearguard being retired. And Shojodoji doesn't retire, it just binds and sends to bottom. So yeah, 3 copies of Togachirashi gets free soul. Again, he's a tech option. You can choose not to run him or you can choose to run him. But you know, he's just card fodder and he just works out that way. So 3 of. Then we have 4 copies of Stealth Fiend Forktail. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto when she's placed on rear guard. You may look at the top 7 cards of your deck. If you do, choose to 1 normal unit with stealth in its card name or glitter from among them. Put it to your soul and shuffle your deck. I don't remember for sure, but I know at least at some point the thought went in my mind. I don't know if I said it like officially or not, but I swear when this card skills first was released, I was like, we're going to get a stealth ride line, aren't we? I swear that's what I said, or I know I at least thought it, because I know I found it weird how none of the ride line for glitter had stealth in their card names, and only generic ass support had stealth in their names, and none of them were particularly good enough to send to soul. I don't know if I said it out loud, but I know I at least thought it when I did the deck profile on Tama-Year. I don't know if I said it out loud ever or not, but still. Either way, her skill's really great in this deck because, again, you get a free soul charge of any normal use unit stealth, so it can be herself or something else. It could be a glitter too, but I'm going to tell you this right now, none of this deck has glitter. So all around, great, works really well in an early game rush because you can just straight up call it. It also has a May clause, so if you don't want to look at the top 7, you don't have to, and again, you don't have to put something into your soul if you don't want to. All around, it's an amazing grade 1. I like it a lot, and it also has the moon in the background, which I just actually noticed for the first time, so more reason to run her in this deck. Great. 4 of Stealth Fiend Forktail. She has the moon, so already she's in here for reasons, and, you know, decent on-place ability that doesn't cost anything and literally get you a free soul. What's not to like about it? 4 of. Then we have 4 copies of Stealth Fiend Koumaaun, aka card that got me confused so much with one of the cards from New Batama, I think it was, from V, that I actively had to go look up V and then look through all the grade 1s to make sure that this wasn't a V card, because I did it once with Overlord and I didn't want to do it again. So anyways, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto when it's placed on rear guard from your hand. By counterblasting 1, choose a card from your opponent's bind zone and you may put it on the bottom of their deck, and if you did not put a card, shoot to 1 unit card with stealth in its card name and grade less than or equal to your vanguard from your bind zone and call it to rear guard. Okay, so all around, this thing's amazing. Because A, while yes, it doesn't proc off from Shojodoji calling it because it has to be called from hand, you could either, so you do have to pick a card in the opponent's bind zone, but you can choose to send that card to bottom. You don't have to send it to bottom. And if you don't, because maybe they don't have a card in their bind zone, or maybe they do and you just choose not to, you get to call a stealth unit. So all around, pretty great. Either get your rear guard or get rid of your opponent's bind zone card, which makes their life much harder to get like their important units back that maybe you sent to bottom. So all around, I like Koumaaun a lot. It's an amazing grade 1. This deck doesn't have much counter boss problem, and even if it did, I think it would be worth it just to use this along with Shojodoji as the vanguard. So great control aspect. I like its skill a lot, and I also like its art, even though it feels like so different from everyone else in this deck based in terms of color-wise. He does look really cool in my opinion. So 4 of Koumaaun, just an amazing grade 1 for this deck. Then we have 4 copies of our PG and Sparkle Rejector Dragon. Grade 1 boosts your Sosis K base, continue essential. You may have up to 4 cells a deck on the pulling guard circle. Choose one of your units, it can be hit on the battle, and if your hand is to mark cards, choose a card from hand, discard it. At this point, I've become so used to reading these skills that for the last 5 videos, like all the deck profiles this week, I have just looked up and or away from the screen and have read those skills word for word or almost word for word. Like, that's how used to this I am. But anyways, Sparkle Rejectors just all around is a good PG. It's a standard PG, meaning that essentially if this is only one of the cards in your hand when you place one guard circle, you don't have to discard one, which all around is great because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game and essentially still have a really decent defense in the late game if your opponent ends up counterattack you, because maybe you called 3 triggers in the early game just to attack your opponent once. Defensive triggers, the answer to every rush. That did not happen in this deck. That's just a generic story I tell every time, because that did happen once, and I still won that game, which was surprising to me. But yeah, so Spark Rejector all around is a nice PG, being able to defend you. Me, personally, I like Twin Buckler more because, you know, he was the one, A, I started out Dragon Empire with, and B, you know, I just had better luck with him. But also the fact that this is one of the few decks, actually I think this is the only Dragon Empire deck I'm running Sparkle Rejector Dragon in, because he's the only one that came out after, the new PG came in. I mean, technically Nirvana Hayava too, but I consider Nirvana Hayava like a subsection of Nirvana, so he's the only this is the only deck I have this PG in, so hopefully it ends in well. But either way, for Sparkle Reject Dragon, he's just a cool grade 1, and I do like his art, so cool. Then we have our last grade 1, it's the grade 1 of the ride deck. The card I wish was the main grade 3 because solely of its art, or that I wish I had reason to put in the main deck, and that is one copy of, only in the ride deck, none in the main deck, of Sakura Romance Stealth Rogue Shojodoji. Okay, before we get to this motherfucker's skill, look at this! Okay, so for those of you that know, I'm a fanboy of katanas. He's got the katana from like a curving angle. He's got his hand doing, and he's doing like even the yo stance. And he has like the hair and like the suit is just coming up, and then he has like the Sakura's blooming. Why couldn't have this been the main grade 3? Why, Bushy? Why? You know what? Fuck this card. Fuck this card. Screw running this card. Run this at a 3 of in the main deck just so we can have more of this beautiful motherfucker. Okay, anyways, grade 1 boost 5k shield, AK base. Auto when it's placed on Vanguard, look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Choose up to 2 of your normal units with stealth and their card names from them. Reveal them, put 1 into your soul, and bind the rest, and shuffle your deck. So you have to put 1 into soul, and you're binding 1 guaranteed and shuffle the rest, but all around, pretty great. Downside is they have to be normal units, so you can't bind fronts or heals, but on the bright side, yeah, you're not binding fronts or heals. So all around, pretty great. It does do setup on the downside, though, if you don't see any units, then too bad, so sad, but hey, it's still a good grade 1 nonetheless. Just for getting the top 5 search for free, regardless of who you rode from and by being placed, and then act Bind Zone, which there is a way to get into Bind Zone from the Soul. If you have a grade 1 or greater Vanguard or Stealth in its card name, by Soul Blasting 1, you get to call its card to rear guard. Another reason why you could actually run this in your main deck, because if you manage to see it from its top 5 search, you can Soul Blast out your starter and then call it to rear guard, because this is a grade 1 or greater with Stealth in its card name. All around, it's an amazing grade 1. I love it a lot, and it's not restricted to Shojodoji named either, so that implies that we might get another Stealth variant, or it's just for premium. Either way, it's an amazing grade 1. I love its art so much. Its skill is amazing to me, and I am actually tempted to drop this down to no copies and then run this as a 4 of just because I can, and I will, because it has such a beautiful art. So 1 of in the rad deck of Shojodoji, and if you don't run this at a 4 of in the main deck now, you are dead to me. Then we have our grade 2s. First up, we have 2 copies of Stealth Dragon Shakugan. Grade 2 units have 5k shield, 10k base, continuous rear guard. During the battle, this unit attacked a grade 3 or greater unit, whether it was the Vanguard or rear guard. It gets plus 5k power. Cool. Such a 15k swing. That honestly is the reason why he's here, because when I was trying to build this deck, I was looking for every unit that had Stealth in its card name so I could, like, you know, best get the consistency of my deck. And I found a decent amount of units. The issue is a lot of their skills weren't that great, and I found 2 units that gained plus 5. This one and the other one that's like from set 1 that everyone ran in Eugene was like on swing if your opponent has 2 or less rear guards, it gets plus 5, which wasn't bad, but when it's between this one, which pretty much goes off all game after the opponent gets to grade 3, and the other one who only has at most a 1-turn advantage over them, I'd rather have Shakugan. You get that, right? Like the extra 5k. So he's honestly a tech option until we get better stealth units, but still a good grade 2 nonetheless because I like having him. So 2 of Shakugan. He's just a 15k swing. Then we have 4 copies of one of the best cards in the deck, if not the best card in this deck, Stealth Dragon Jakumetsu Ox. So first up, we already know I have bias towards him as well because he has arrows, and I love arrows, so cool. How many cards in the deck does that make some bias for? This one, definitely this one, this one, this one. So that's about 4 cards so far that I'm biased for. Anyways, grade 2 and stuff 5k shield, 10k base. Auto when it's placed on your rear guard from your bind zone, regardless of who effect it was by, and regardless of whose turn it is. This unit gets plus 5k power at end of turn. Cool. This card's gonna cause problems in premium the second Bushy does anything to it. I can already tell. Speaking of which, I just now realized we haven't had a premium collection in a while. Huh. Anyways, so instant +5, which is pretty good, getting pluses, and not to mention the fact that it can plus itself off from Shojodoji's call, so that's amazing as well. And then auto rear when this unit attacks into anything, whether it's Vanguard or Rearguard, which I'm so thankful for, by Soul Blasting 1, choose a card from your opponent's bind zone and put it to the bottom. That's why I love this card so much. Not only can it swing into anything, but it can also get rid of an opponent's bind zone card, meaning that they're important units, you've gotten rid of them. And I love that skill so much, it's just amazing. I find it so good. The only way this card could be better is if this was a moon, and that's honestly it. If that was a moon, that would honestly be it. But yeah, just an easy instant 15k swing just being placed by bind zone, possibly a 25k swing with just Shojodoji skill alone and no other triggers or boost or any effects applied, and then being able just to remove something from the opponent's bind zone, just all around amazing. I don't like the fact that they put it to bottom instead of like discarding it like they did in premium, but it's still good nonetheless. So 4 Jakumetsu arcs, just a good grade 2 of getting rid of your opponent's stuff. Then we have our last grade 2, and that's the grade 2 of the ride deck. 1 copy only in the ride deck, none in the main deck, of a World Shaper Stealth Rogue Shojodoji. Again, this one feels like, I don't know why, in my opinion, the grade 3, after seeing the rest of the ride line, except for the grade 0, feels like the grade 3 shouldn't have been the real arc, because I could see this being the real grade 3, I could definitely see this being the real grade 3, just feels like disappointing, you know? But anyways, World Shaper, grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base, auto is placed on Vanguard, look at the top 5, choose to 2 normal stealths in their card name from them, reveal them, put 1 into the soul, and call the other to rear guard and shuffle your deck. So almost the exact same similar thing as Shojodoji, and if you don't remember, I kind of bashed this on, I think it was Genesis, where I said I hate the fact how they copied and pasted the exact same ride line skill, but in reality, yes, for this one, while they did technically do that, they changed it, because in Genesis, they made it the exact same. In this deck, for this one sends something to soul and bind zone, this one sends something to soul and rear guard. So all around, pretty great, and then it has almost the exact same second skill, which is act bind zone if you have a grade 2 or greater Vanguard stealth in its card name. By soul blasting 1 calls card to rear guard. Again, if you bound a copy of this, you can just call out if you had soul, because again, it doesn't restrict it to Shojodoji name, it just restricts it to stealth name, which again is interesting how they're doing this. I'm curious what their plan is, or unless this is just for already existing stealth stuff in premium. All around though, World Shaper Stealth Rogue Shojodoji is just an amazing grade 2. Being able to get Board Rush out and being able just to, you know, get Soul and Rear Guard just by being placed is just an amazing grade 2 nonetheless. So one of in the ride deck, and again, this deck has a lot of tech options. I could see people scrapping this down to 0 and then just running 2 copies of this in the main deck just to get Rear Guard plus, like you would run this at 4 just to get Rear Guard plus. But again, this one I think would be needed for at least Soul charging mechanics. So one of World Shaper in the ride deck for me, just because I like to have, you know, options such as a 15k swing, but amazing grade 2 nonetheless, and if the situation occurred for, I would still not hesitate to put him in the main deck. And then we move on to our grade 3s. First up, we have 4 copies of Stealth Dragon Unpreceden. Is that just supposed to be Unprecedent, but just without the T? Grade 3 generic Persona 13k base. I don't like his art as much, even though I can tell there's Sakura flowers. It just doesn't bring it together to me because, I don't know, I feel like this thing's just kind of ugly looking, and the sword feels a little too big to me. Anyways, auto win is placed on rear guard by your card's ability. Doesn't matter by whose ability, as long as it's your card's ability. If you have a Vanguard Tamayura or Shojodoji in its card name, Soul Blast 1 to draw a card. Okay, great. You most likely have the soul for this anyways. It can be any Soul Blaster card, unlike Shojodoji, who has to specifically Soul Blast stealth units, so free draw, which is nice. And then continues rear guard. If you 2 or more cards were put from your rear guard into your soul this turn, it gets plus 10. This is why I feel like it does better in this deck than it does in, what's it called, Tamayura, because unlike in Brandgate, where Ava and, Arkwright had that 1 grade 1 Rebros who worked really well for both decks, except for I guess Soul technically would end up in more in Arkwright's section. Unprecedented works better in my opinion in Shojodoji's deck because more likely than not you're going to call the doll from Tamayura's skill and rearguard shoving stuff to Soul. While yes, that's possible, now it's not really that, well actually kind of is often, but you know what I'm trying to say here. So I feel like Unprecedented kind of works a lot better in Shojodoji, more obviously, than Rebros does in Arkwright, but still it's an amazing skill nonetheless, being a 23k swing, which is really nice, and not to mention the fact they don't have to be put to your soul during your turn, it can be put to soul during your opponent's turn, so fuck you Barrow Magnus, if this somehow survived Barrow Magnus' soul charging skill, and again, the free draw just from being placed by your card's abilities, just an amazing skill nonetheless, so I like it a lot. I think it's an amazing grade 3, and it's an instant bound target, an instant like shove to soul target for every other skill, so 4 of Unprecedented, just a good grade 3 all around. Then we have our last unit in the deck, but not the last card in the deck. 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the red deck of Peak Personage Stealth Rogue Shojodoji, grade 3 turn, Persona 13k base. I'm going to say this now. I know a lot of us want to see more decks used in the anime. This is one of them. It's not for me. I know it's not going to be used, but if they do, even if it's just for one fight, and they actually give this man, like, you know, the animation treatment where they show him in the anime, I will be satisfied. But anyways, his skill is Active Vanguard once per turn by biting 2 cards with stealth in their card names from your soul. Doesn't matter which stealth, just it can be Stealth Dragon, Stealth Beast, Stealth Rogue, etc. Choose 2 of your opponent's rear guards, bind all the cards on the chosen rear guard circles, and your opponent puts those cards into their hand at the end of the turn. Okay, so kind of like After Imaging, but cool, you get to bind 2 cards at the same time. Technically, you could bind all of them, so like, you know, if they overdress and you pick 2 overdress targets, so I don't know why you would do that, because you're definitely not out, like, you're not sending all of those to bottom in one turn, depending on how many cards were under there. If anything, you're just giving them more ammo to shoot at you, unless you're trying to get rid of the Trick Stars, which is fair. But anyways, cool, can get rid of multiple rear guards at once, 2 battles at once per turn, and then Auto Vanguard, when this unit attacks into a Vanguard, by counterblasting 1 and putting 2 rear guards into your soul, so the way you're going to get plus 10k from this boy, choose a card with stealth in its card name from your bind zone, call it to rear guard, and if your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 guard, the called unit gets plus 10 for the turn. So great, this gets plus 10, the thing you call gets plus 10, this is swinging for at least 13. All around, it's an amazing just swinger. He gets rid of rear guards, he gets you more rear guards to call, most likely going to be this and or this. You get a possible draw out of it, or you get another remove stuff in the opponent's bind zone. All around, it's just an amazing deck to play, and it's really nice to feel. Just getting the extra 10k power too is just makes it even better. Honestly, it just feels like the Vanguard itself lacks pressure, but even then, like, his skills help put pressure. I say he's more of a supporting grade 3, or at least that's how I feel. Like, he feels like he supports the deck more than the deck supports him, but he still does a lot for the deck, like binding rear guards, making their life harder, getting rid of important units, and just getting multi-attack with extra numbers, and increasing your soul for next turn, because then you can scoop this into soul, and then bind it out next turn, and then call it next turn. Just incredible loops you can do with him. He's an amazing grade 3. I like him a lot, and the cards you put to soul for his skill don't have to be stealth units, just the card you soul blast. So all around amazing card, 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck. And then we have our last card in the deck, which is 2 copies of the Order Return to the Afterlife. Grade 3, I believe its other name was like Return to Equinox or something, which is better in my opinion. But anyways, Grade 3 normal order, play if you have a Vanguard, Shojodoji in its card name. You and your opponent both choose one of your own rearguard circles and bind all the cards chosen on those rearguard circles. At the end of the turn, each player puts those bound cards into their hand. Here's a hint for you. Call a PG, bind that PG. So you know you're benefiting off this because your PG is going back to hand anyways, and your opponent just losing that unit, or if you manage to like send it to bottom. And then if both you and your opponent bound a card for this, if I put it to soul, great. So combine this with Shojodoji, bind a total of 3 cards, and this says you have to bind 2 cards of stealth in their card name. So while they don't have to be units, this doesn't have stealth in its card name, sadly, unless the English name chooses to make it stealth, which would be great. But getting rid of a total of 3 rear guards in a turn, managed possibly to getting rid of 2 to 3 of them, depending on how many arcs you have on both your board and in your hand and or your bind zone. So all around, it's an amazing order. I like it a lot. Definitely helps for setup play. Gets you soul as well. What's not to like about it? It's just 2. It does it all for free, by the way. So yeah, at least consider it. And I say put it at 2 of. And that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, in my opinion, it's very fun. Oh, before I forget, I don't run the Persona right order because, I don't know, it just feels cheap to run outside of 2 very specific decks, and it makes the game too easy, in my opinion. So, yeah, no Persona right order in this deck. But anyways, yeah, that's the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, it's fun for me to play. It's, like, has some really cool arts. Again, one of these 2 should have been the main grade 3 arts, mainly leaning towards this one. Hell, I might even make this the thumbnail now. So, yeah, but either way, it's fun. You get to bind your opponent's stuff, and you get to send them to bottom very consistently. You have a good amount of soul to work with. It's kind of like Tamayura, but what I expected it to be. Yeah, I think that's honestly like a good description. Tamayura, but what I expected it to be. So without further ado, I'm going to end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join the Discord, follow Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one, as this marks the end of Set 8 deck profiles. I'll see you all when we get more decks. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.